Okay, there's one concept that I had asked you to work on. I've been trying to look at what various of you have done on it, and this is with the find prereqs. I gave it to you, and then sort of we discussed, but we never really finalized it. And just before the break, Abdul Leela and I was discussing this, and he brought up some interesting points. So at least for him, I have to do this now. He actually asked some very interesting questions. I know that the best solution I saw for a while among the student projects was Stellars. Josh has done some version of it, which is somewhat different. And Mike, you did something, but I don't know if you took it to completion. Is it working fully?
I haven't been able to
okay.
completely.
Okay.
I had to start all over.
Okay. So is there any other solution that's there other than... Okay, so I'm going to go through borrowing heavily from Stellar and modifying it, but Abdul Leela pointed out that there was a flaw in how that was presented, so that's something I'm going to address, and bring in some display aspects which is associated with it, which are called view models, which is required to address what Abdul Leela brought up. So it sort of gets us into the UI aspect, which I'll continue on for discussion going into next week. And there's at least one other aspect. So I'm trying to see, these are sort of, even though I'll address it under find prerequisites, it's sort of correlated to it, or it's a concept by itself, so I will not put it as a subtopic. Another thing that Josh brought up was connecting, so if you connect from a controller, let's say you use a view bag, especially I think it was with drop downs, right, Josh? Okay. Drop down list, and how you connect the controller to the view. And then back to the controller, right? That's the and it can take a while once you understand or see the connection, then it's easy, but you don't, otherwise you might spend a lot of time going through that. So that's another piece. What's the other? I think these are the main ones I want to address. And then you need to pay attention to this, because on the individual project level, I am going to have you use this for two purposes. One is to display the prerequisites, and the other is where do we need to take this once we find prerequisites. One is just to show prerequisites for a course, but the second is to do what? Yeah, well, the students have taken, so before you register a student, you have to apply this. So what I want you to do is take whatever we discussed today, have that functionality, and it's basically going to go through the entire process, creating a method, testing it, then connecting it to a controller, and then displaying it on the view. So you might want to think of it as a review for your upcoming test to go through this process. So let me get started. And after that, I'll meet with groups if we have some time. I think it's group 4. I'm definitely meeting with you immediately after. Is there any other group that has Okay, that's group 9. So group 4, group 9. Do either of your group members have class immediately after this? Okay, so you can, okay, so neither of you, so I'll meet first with group 4 and then with group 9. Any other groups? Okay. One of the things that Josh again brought up last was sometimes just sitting with somebody to just go through what's in your mind actually helps troubleshoot. So if you want to use me as a sounding board, that's fine too. So anyways, Josh was an illusion that I solved something for him. Actually, he spoke it out himself. And I was just sort of seemingly asking intelligent questions. It was just an illusion. So anyways, coming back to this, again, the big picture here is we have this unary association course going back to itself, and we are wanting to look for all the prerequisites. So the first level prerequisites is an interesting, somewhat challenging problem, but what makes it really challenging is setting up the recursion, okay, which Stella set up really very nicely. So I'll go into my prerequisite, course prerequisite course. So I want to make sure this is visible. Do I need to increase the font size? Can you see it, Cody?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay. Is it increased? Let me see if I...
You already changed the size up in the top right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
You didn't change it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to, one of the nice things that anytime there's a really complex concept or logic, you want to break it down into simpler modules. So that's one thing that Stella did that helped me understand this process a little better. And what she did was, instead of looking at all of the components that we need to display, that is course number, course title, prereq number, prereq title, she just looked at the smallest piece. So, and this is where having its own ID helps. What Stella focused was on course ID, but there is sort of a limitation with that. So while if you get into course prerequisite ID, if we didn't have this, if we had just used this composite primary key, it wouldn't work as easily. So this will be our focus. And why is this so? Because each of these IDs essentially represents this combination. Otherwise it'll be harder to pull out each of the prerequisite courses. So okay, let me just start creating this. Right, I'll create it somewhere up here so that you can see it. Okay. public, it's going to be a static method because it's dealing with multiple objects, so I don't want to make it an instance method. I call it find prereq IDs because it is actually, that's not quite true. It's actually, I'm trying to find the course prereq IDs. So I'll change this to find course prereq ID. So it's this ID that I'm looking for. If I called it find prereq ID, then it would indicate I'm just getting this. Okay. So this is going to be based off of the user is choosing. If I were to run this, you'll see that the user chooses from a drop-down list, and what the user is choosing is a particular course. Okay, and what represents the course that the user is choosing from a drop-down? What represents each course? We could either go with the course number or the course ID, right? And we are using course ID as the identifier. So I'm going to use int course ID. And what I want to return is a list of what? What's the simplest thing I could return? List of this IDs. That way I can then, and what Abdul Leela pointed out was, whenever I'm listing the result, I cannot, like for example, in my set here, this is 452. 452 has 450 and 353 as prerequisites. And now you can see 353 has 352 and 351. Now, when I display the prereqs, what he pointed out was I shouldn't just, if I just listed all four as prereqs, that's not quite correct, right? Because only these are direct prereqs, and then these two are prereqs of 353, which is a prereqs. So when you're displaying it, we really need to display course number, prereq number, and then so it'll be essentially 4 rows, and that's where logic was breaking down. And if we don't, and that's where this concept of a view model comes in. So and I'll bring that in next after we complete this discussion. Okay. So we want to list off this course prerequisite IDs here. Okay, let me open up this. I'll make a list, and this is this list that I just created. I'll call this something, what did I call it? Course prereq IDs. It's a new list. Let's see what it is. I need to return this back. Okay. Let's see what is it containing. Course prereq list of. No, actually, this is incorrect here. It's what do you think I'm trying to return? List of ints. So it's just list of ints. Okay, so I have my list just initialized. So, and then I go to the database. You can actually either have this database pre-existing, or you can create it. When I say pre-existing, by putting it as outside, but application DB context database equals new. So I get access to a database object. Once I have access to this, then I set up a query, and this one you probably can improve it in different ways, but I'm going to go with what I have here. So I want to get a list of prereqs, and then I want to just, and if you find something that's obviously more efficient, let me know. But what I'm going to do is I want a list of the prereq objects. So this is going to be a list of course prereq objects. Call this course prereqs. So this is different from the IDs that I'm sending back out of this method. And I'm going to do a select operation on this, so it will be from. So I need to go into the database. So I'm going to say from course prerequisite in database dot course prereqs. What do I want to do? I want to use a where clause, where I'll give an alias here, call it CP for course prerequisite, where course CP dot course ID is equivalent to whatever the course ID the user chooses, and okay, and so this is, and what else do I need? I need to select that object and convert it to a list of course prerequisite objects. Okay, so what is this going to give me? For whatever, let's say the user has chosen 452, this gives me the course prerequisites for 452, which is 450 and 353. Now, since I want it for multiple levels, I'm basically doing a for each, and I want to get at each of the objects inside course prereqs. So what is each object here, each course prereq? The data type is right here, course prerequisite. Okay, so for each of these, what do I want to do? So when I get back this, there are two things. One is I want to accumulate these course prerequisites, right? The list of integers. So the first thing I'll do is to say course prerequisites ID dot I want to add, and what's the one that I want to add? The one that's already here, right? So I want to add each course prerequisite ID dot course prerequisite ID. Okay, so that's my first step. What's the second step? When you're using recursion, what do you do? So for each of them, I've added in whatever I got back into this. So now for 353, which has its own prerequisites, how do I get at that? So if we are using recursion, we are going to call this itself, right? So I want to say find course prerequisite IDs, and what do I send in as the input? Okay, each course prereq dot, which of these properties? Is it course ID? If it is course ID, it would refer to 452, not 353. Okay, it's prereq ID. Okay, so this is what I want to send in, but what I need to determine here, and this was, I think, several of you, if I remember right, it was Preston, Mike, and somebody else, I think, who said, well, this is bringing back like in 353, it brings back two values for 352 and 351. So when I send from here, when I go back, call this itself with 353, it comes back with two values, right? So if I just said add whatever is brought back to this list, it's not going to add multiple values. So what was the option here? So the course prereq IDs, we want to, so this is bringing back multiple IDs of the prereq of 353. So we said IDs dot, instead of add, it's going to be add range, right? So add range, and we go all the way here, and this. Okay, and what else do we need to do? And that's about all that we need to do to get the entire set of prerequisite courses. Now the issue is, this doesn't obviously, the reason I kept it at this was, and I followed Stella's logic, she had it slightly different. She used something else instead of course prereq ID, but she kept it very simple so we can test it. If we bring in name, the number and title, it makes it much more complex to sort of understand. But we now need to test it to make sure that we have the actual data. So I'm going to test it using course ID input as 1, okay, which is for 452. So I'll try to see if it brings back these 4 courses as prerequisites. Okay, so before I proceed, any questions on this? I think you can structure this using a lambda expression, maybe a little more efficiently. But before, this is the key. This is where all the logic really exists, where you're doing the processing. And one of the neat things, once you get used to this recursion, it actually makes these types of queries or methods much cleaner and simpler. If you try to do this with any other way, it will, I'm not even sure we can do it if it's multi-level. Okay, no questions? So you understand this? Okay, let's go to the test and try to set up the test. Okay, I'll change this to prereq test. Okay. This is going to be a test for find course prereq IDs. So I'm going to go in here and change it to the three arrange, act. The three steps in testing. Let's see what is involved in arranging here. I need to get the expected, so what am I calling this? So the expected, so I'm looking at the expected course IDs. I'll call this expected course prereq IDs. Need to include the collections.generic. So what I'm expecting is if I give the, in my case, and you have to see what your data set is, I'm going to use a course ID of 1, and if I give a course ID of 1, I'm expecting there to be 4 different courses that are getting returned. Okay. So I'll set up another list. One. Okay, one of the issues here is if I bring in the the list of course prerequisite objects, this is a list of integers. So let's, to make it very simple for the test, what are these values I'm expecting? What is getting returned is the course prereq ID. Is the course prereq ID anywhere in this populate method? It's being auto-generated on the database. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what I need to add in here, just to make it simple, would be expected course prerequisites ID. I'll just add, there might be a easier add range somewhere, but I'm not quite sure how that works. So I'm just going to add in these 4. Okay. So those are the 4 I'm expecting. Now, what else do I need to do? I need to get the, I'm looking for the actual, so, well, I can just go directly to the action. List of integers. This is the actual course prereq IDs. Let me go in the list as well. And this actual is going to come from course. I'm going to run course prerequisite. So it's not recognizing. I need to add the reference. Find prereq IDs, and here I need to give a course ID, and I'm going to give a course ID in my case, whatever corresponds to the very first, that's 452. So if I go into my course class in my model, when I set the values, the very first one was missed 452, so my expected course ID is 1. So I'm sending that in as my input, and then I'm going to compare this list of the IDs. So essentially, if the course IDs match, I really want them to come back as true. So if I now say assert dot are equal expected course IDs with the actual course IDs. Now if I were to run this, what's the likely result going to be? Yeah. It's going to fail because I'm comparing two collections, right? And the other is, though in this case, okay, I made a mistake here. I should have given course ID, which I have assigned to. Okay, so let me just run it and see if this works. If not, I need to, at the very least, change it to comparing the collection. So maybe right here I'll change it to collection assert instead of okay. I'll also put a breakpoint to right here, so that I'll check and see what's coming back from the database over here. I'll build this and see if I can detect the test. Okay, let me run this. Okay, it is passing, but I still want to debug it to see what the values are that are getting returned. This is one thing that I do all the time. I'm a little surprised that not many of you rely on this. So if I look at the values, these are the values that are coming back from the database, which is what I expected. Okay, so this is working here. So the next step is, but this by itself is not of much use to me. I need to have the course number and the course title, but that doesn't exist anywhere, right? I have, so if I wanted, well, I have the course, if I wanted a course number and the course title just for the, either the course or the prerequisite, it would be fine, but how do I want to display this? So I want to display course number, course title, prereq number, prereq title. Is there any model that a class that provides me this entire set? And the reason this becomes important is when I generated the this list of prereq IDs, what does it give me? It gives me the course ID and the prereq ID. So essentially they are side by side, but I have to populate it out now with the number and the title, which are there in course, but I don't have course ID, course number, prereq ID, prereq number. So anytime you want to display something like this, which doesn't exist in one of the classes, you create what's called a model for a view. And so that's the concept I wanted to bring in. And as I said, it was Abdul Leela's question that sort of made me go into this, but it's important if you don't find a way of displaying it using an existing class. And if you look at we look at creating, like, registering users. So if you can see under the model, one of the pre-built models is an account view model. You'll get to it sometime in the next week or maybe the week after. You can see it creates its own view models for login and so on. There are multiple view models which we will reference later. But for now, what we'll do is create a view model for prerequisites. I'll call it a prerequisite view model. So I'm going to add a class which I'll call it course prerequisite or course prereq if you want to shorten it. Course prereq view model. Okay, so this is going to have you can see that this doesn't have very much all that it has is a set of properties that you're using for display. And what are the properties that we are going to use for our display? Okay, public string course number get set. Public string course title get set. Public string prereq number get set. Public string prereq. Okay, so we have these four. Now we have two options. We could try to populate this in the controller, or we could try to control it in this. We could try to populate. We already have, remember, the list of course prereq IDs. So we want to take these prereq IDs and convert it into that sort of course and prereq together in one row. Okay. So where would you, if you were doing this design, where would you do it? Would you do it in the controller or in a method in the model? Wherever there's logic involved, what do you do? Where do you want to move it? Into the model. Keep the controllers as lean as possible. So, which means that I'm going to set up this public static, and this time it's going to be essentially the equivalent of this, but instead of returning a list of integers, this is what's going to go to the controller. And what's this list going to be? List of this course prereq view model. Okay, and so I'll just call this something similar to this. So instead of Okay, so instead of prereq IDs, I'll say find course prereq details. What's the input parameter here? The input parameter is exactly this. Right? So it's going to be the same in course ID. And when you're inside, again, just to get rid of this complaint from here, I'm just going to set up an array, or I'm sorry, a list of course prereq view model, and just call it instead of I want it to be course prereq details. Okay, so in between, what do I need to do here? I obviously want to use this and get this list of course prereqs that this returns. And then I need to use that list to then populate my list of whatever details here. Yes?
Don't you want to make that a list instead of an int for your input time?
Which one? Over here?
Yeah, for course ID, don't want that to be a list of integers. You're going to hand it the whole list and then find all of the information out of that list.
Well, what I'm here, the design was I'll send this to this method and get this list from here.
Oh, you're doing that one?
Yeah, so what's the alternate that you had in mind?
I was thinking you were getting the course prerequisites first and then passing that on as the details.
Well, finding this list first and then calling this from there. Okay. I could do that as well. What I'm doing here is I'm getting this list and then I'm going back into the database and getting all of the values to populate this list. Okay, so I'm just going to call this one. So it's a list of integers that comes back. You don't have to. I'm passing this in here, get the list of whatever those 4 IDs, 1, 2, 3, 4. And once I get that list, then I need to process it to get at the entire and I've tried to use a similar SQL-like structure. So I'm saying course prereq details from course prerequisite CP, pretty much the same thing, except, okay, so let me see if I can just copy this here. Okay, I'll just do this and then make the changes. So it's the same SQL statement, except, okay, I've not declared database. One thing you can do is to take this out of the method and make it, so the reference to database will then exist. Oh, it's static? Okay, so then, okay, I'll have to put it inside of each. Okay. I'll just make it static? Public static? Okay. Public. Okay, so now I have access to this. What I need to change here is, one of the things now is well, let's see, so this is a list of, it's not just course prerequisite, but this is going to be course prereq. It's a list of course prereq view model objects that I'm creating. But even more importantly, let's see, I think. Okay. So what is more important here is that I, instead of saying where cp dot course ID, what am I looking for here? It's cp dot, I'm comparing to course prereq IDs, and instead of looking for equality, I'm looking, it's going to be, is this a single value here? It's a set of values. So in SQL, when you're comparing a set of values, what do? Use a in or contain. So here the equivalent of in is, there is a dot contains where course, okay, I want where course prereq IDs contains cp dot course prereq ID. So when I'm getting it from the database, I want to make sure that ID is in this list of IDs that I have. Also, the other thing I'm doing is and just to make sure that I get the course information, I'm going to include the course table. And finally, so the last thing I want to do, and this is anytime you don't, what I'm constructing, so if I just said select CP, what's it going to give me? It's going to give me everything inside course prerequisite, which is not what I want. Instead, I need to construct, so whenever you have a view model, you have to construct a new object, and the way you do it is a little bit, so what I'm saying is, I'm going to construct a new course prereq view model object each time one of the rows matches this condition. And the way I do that is, so I say new object, and then open, close, curly braces. And within this, I'm going to say, what are the properties of this view model? I have the first property is course number. Right? So I'll say course number, where does it come from? CP dot. Do I have it directly here? It's not quite there, so I have to navigate through course to get at the course number. Okay, so can you see what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to construct objects of this course preview view model which didn't previously exist. Okay, so I need that, comma, course title comes from cp dot course title. Prereq number comes from cp dot, where do I get it from? Prereq dot what? It's again course number, right? Because prereq is also a course. And finally, prereq title cp dot prereq dot course title. Okay, So this gives me the list of all the course prereq details, and then I can basically return the details. So again, most of the really complex logic is inside of this method here with the recursion, but can you see if I try to combine this with this will become very hard to handle. So by breaking it up into two components, one just getting the IDs, the second getting the course number, name, prereq number, and the name. Okay, so do you understand what's happening here? If you have any questions, please ask me. Ideally, you would set up a test for this as well, but I'm somewhat confident that this is going to work because the underlying primary key values the primary key value is this. I know this is coming back correct because of this test. Okay, so I don't necessarily need a second test. At least for now, for time reasons, I won't do that. So once I have it, I then go into my controller. Of course, we were discussing this sometime earlier. We created this. So if I were to run this and just build so that you can see what's currently happening, what we need to add on. Keep in mind that the reason this test ran was because we were dealing with what was this list? It's a list of integers. Now let's say I wanted to compare two lists of course prereq objects. If I just did this collection assert, it's not going to work, or even use the sequence equality. In that case, what would I have to do? This is something we did a long time ago. An override. So you would have to do this override. So on your project and on the exam, please keep this in mind. You have to do the overrides to get those collection tests working. Okay. Except if it's comparing a simple set of integers, it doesn't need it. But if you were comparing objects of what's that course prerequisite, you would have had to put this in. Okay. Now let me run this so you can see what's currently happening with check prerequisites. Okay, there is this drop-down list of values, and those values are being provided through, in the controller we have this get method with a view bag, and this is going and populating. You can see it goes to the database. This was sort of pre-generated from the scaffolding. It goes to the view. There it is. Course prerequisites view, search for prerequisites. We had built this up, and this is the part that you have to be a little careful about. So we are getting this as a selection list, viewbag.courses. The reason being that we needed to call it exactly by this name. Now, the next piece, and this is the piece that Josh brought in, was so we go from the controller, connecting the controller with the view bag, a drop-down list to the view. Okay. Now from the view, we need to go back to the controller, to a method. Currently, if you look at the view, okay, if I were to click on this button here, Okay, let's see. What's happening? Nothing is happening because I haven't connected this app to go to another method which is in the controller. So I have to set up saying where I want it to go. So I'll just set up this very quickly. Could have done some copy paste, but I'm going to just do it so you can. This we discussed in class. Hopefully you have this code. This is search for prerequisites. So at using, and I'm going to connect it up with the controller and the method. So HTML dot begin form method. So within begin form, I have to specify which method it needs to go to, as well as the name of the controller. So the first attribute here is the name of the method, okay, the action name. So what's the name of this method? Do we already have this method? So we could, what I'll do is, the simplest thing is I could just copy paste this. The convention is that you can either call it by some other name, or if you call it by the same name, you have to indicate whether it's a get or a post method. And the other piece is you cannot have the signature exactly the same. And this is where you have the second, the part I mentioned. So you're going from the controller with the view back to the view, and then coming back to the controller. Now, and for a project, please pay attention to this. What's the name of this drop down? How do we reference this? This is the variable that we are referencing. What's the variable that's getting sent back? What's its name? It's course ID with an uppercase C. It's case sensitive, and this is where it can get, if you're getting any errors or values not coming in, just make sure that you use the exact name as the drop-down list name. If you don't, then it won't connect back. And the simplest way to test it is if you put a breakpoint. Okay, so it comes back here, search for prerequisites. So I'll go back into my first view and specify the action name is the same name, or I could have changed it. If you want to, you can just call it search for prerequisites results, but I'll just call it as is. That's usually the convention. So I'm going to specify this is a string, so within quotes. That's the action. Then I specify the controller name. The controller name is course prerequisites, and keep in mind you don't put the controller suffix. And finally, if this is going to be a post method, so you're posting it to the form. Okay. So those are the three parameters that you provide, and I'll put this inside of these curly braces. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to save the controller, go into the controller and save this. I don't want a view back. I'll just say, so over here, what do I want to do? I want to call the method, which is inside of my course prerequisite dot find course prerequisite details. I send in the course ID, and what do I expect back? The list. So I get a list of, this is going to be course prerequisite view model. So I'll say this is course prereq view model list. So when I'm returning the view, I'm going to return the data which is inside of. So if you look at the options you have, you can return a view name along with the model. So I'm going to say search for prereqs result, and I'm going to send the course prereqs. Okay, you understand this piece, right? Anytime we are creating a new, we are generating a new view, we want to send it over with the data associated with it. So at this point, just to check it's working, I'll put a breakpoint. So I don't want to proceed to the next step without checking that I am getting a course ID. So I'll put a breakpoint here and another breakpoint here. Okay. So if I debug it now, it should come and stop at this point and show me whatever course ID I have selected. Okay. Okay, so it's now basically stopped here. You can see my course ID is 1. If I continue on, you can see I've gotten a list of these 4, and it's actually populated with all those values. Okay. And what's the last step I need to do? What's the last missing piece? The view for the result. Okay, good. So I'll create this, add view, or I can go there and add the view. Search for prerequisites result, and to make it simple, I could try to make a list. And what's the model class? Course prerequisite. Is it course prerequisite? It is the view model. Right? So all these are objects of the view model. So it's going to be course prereq view model, and then I'll add this in. And there's a validation error, has no key defined. That's interesting. So I can't generate it without a key being defined. Okay, so without it going to the database, it cannot do it. Okay. 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 Okay, that makes sense. So we are, because it's a view model, it's not generating it. So instead, just to get the template, I'll just get it from one of these here. So I went into the index of course prereqs, and I'm just going to Control C. Well, I'm just going to add in this new view. Right click, add. This is going to be search for prereqs result. I'm making it empty. If you don't want to repeat the title, if it's very long, you can just bring it back from there. I don't want to use this create option. So the other thing I want to change here is, instead of it being course prerequisite, the model is, what's the model? How many of you are following along with me? Okay. If you're not following along with me, you're in trouble, because you need to extend this into. So this is, I'm using this for display, but what did I say you need to do on your individual project? Apply it to not only the group project. I'm going to check your individual project on Tuesday. And what do you think I'm going to check it on? No, not, well, I'll check it on Azure as well. But that's for display. How do I see if you can extend this? When you're registering a student for a course, what did we have to check? Whether the student has taken the prereqs for the course. So we have checked the prereqs. Now you have to get this information, whatever you've done, into the prereqs test for the student to register. So that's the piece that you're taking this. So it's whatever else we've already done here. So, but the other piece you have to extend it. So that's the piece I'm looking at. Okay, so this is the view model that so what we are displaying is the course number followed by, well, from the model we want the course number. Just to make it easier, I'm just going to copy paste a little bit. So the second column is the course title. Model dot, it's directly there off of the model. The course number, I don't have to navigate over course title. This is in the header, so whatever the header is, prereq number, and then finally so this basically allows you to display directly from the model. Otherwise, it's much more complex to get at all the course and the prerequisites at the same time. So as far as display is concerned, it's going to be pretty much similar. So here you have display name for, and here it's display for. So the simplest thing I could do is just bring this. So this is item. So I'll just do this. Item dot course number. Item dot course title. And then two more cells or columns. The third one is, what's the third column? The prereq number, and the fourth is the prereq title. Okay, so now if I run this, so when you debug and you stop it, the browser will still be open, but it's okay. So this is it. And if you go with something else, and if there is no prereq, you probably want to give some other message here, but right now it comes by. So what you need to extend this into, if you understood the logic, is to take it into the registration. If you looked at our course registration and in the model, we went through the, where is that method, register student in course. So when we are registering the student in course, we have to check for, so before we even try registering, what do we need to do? You have to check if the student has taken this list of courses. So we are getting a list of course. We have a list of prereq IDs. So whatever courses that are associated with that, the course numbers, you have to see if the student has taken it. And if the student has taken all of them, what will be the result? It will be the result is going to be, will you get a set of courses, or what's the result of comparing courses the student has taken with the set of prerequisites? If the student has taken all the prerequisites, what should you get back as a result set? What's that? Yeah, after, but when you do the comparison itself, if you compare the two sets, yeah? Yeah, it can come back as true or false. The results, you can think of, if you want to display to the user, the next step would be, if you're displaying the set of prereqs not taken, so you're saying you cannot take it, and if the student's asking, so why can I not take it, then you can either just say you've not taken prereqs, or you can say you've not taken this list of prereqs, which is a more complex result. But basically, when you compare the two, if a student has taken everything, the result set is an empty set, right? So, which is not very intuitive. So the result, if the student has taken all courses as an empty set, if the student has not taken something, it actually comes back with a set of courses that the student has not taken. Okay. So think about that and try to implement it here for registering students. But for that to work, you'll have to first have this, whatever we did today, to work. And if, unlike Abdul Leela, you are not paying attention, then you have to go through this video and do it, because I am checking on Tuesday. I need to see what you have done. Okay, you cannot just not do. This is one of the really interesting and deeper things. It's not just about showing fancy graphics. That's you can just drag and drop stuff. This is the more interesting logical thinking, and I want to see everyone do it. Okay. If it's not done, then I won't give you much credit on whatever your individual project. I want to see it. Okay. Otherwise,